One of two people who were seriously injured on Saturday after a car drove into a protest on a closed section of Interstate 5 in Seattle has died, the authorities said. Summer Taylor, 24, of Seattle died Saturday night at Harborview Medical Center, a UW-Medicine spokeswoman said. The other injured protester, Diaz Love, 32, of Portland, Oregon, was hospitalized in serious condition, the spokeswoman said. Both had live-streamed the protest before they were injured, the Seattle Times reported. During the early hours of Saturday morning, a small group of protesters gathered on a section of Interstate 5 that had been blocked off by the authorities, said Trooper Chase Van Cleve of the Washington State Patrol. It was one of many protests that have been organized in Seattle and across the country since the killing of George Floyd in police custody in Minneapolis in May. The protesters had been on the highway for a little over an hour when a white car drove southbound through a blockade and toward the protesters at a high rate of speed, striking both victims, Trooper Van Cleve said. The driver continued southbound for over a mile before stopping, he said. Trooper Van Cleve identified the driver as Dawit Collette, 27. Mr. Collette, who the Seattle Times reported is from Seattle, was booked into the King County Jail on Saturday morning on a charge of vehicular assault, according to jail records. Mr. Collette had a sobriety test and the results showed he was not under the influence, according to a police report. While in custody, the authorities described him as being reserved and sullen, and said he asked about the conditions of the injured protesters. Early this morning, two women were hit by a car and very seriously injured while peacefully protesting, Mayor Jenny Durkan of Seattle said on Twitter on Saturday afternoon. Many others were almost hit and witnessed this horrific event. Our city stands beside their friends, families and loved ones in praying for these women and all who were there. A GoFundMe campaign that was started on Saturday to help cover medical expenses for Summer Taylor said, Summer is an incredibly strong and independent spirit. They are a bright and caring person whose presence elicits joy and laughter in others. The page said that Summer Taylor worked at Urban Animal, a veterinary clinic, and used non-binary pronouns. Everyone there really loved them, said Keenan Camacho, a friend and former coworker. Keenan Camacho, who uses non-binary pronouns, said when they came out as transgender, Summer Taylor was one of their biggest supporters. They were always the first one to call people out for being sexist, racist, standing up for queer and trans people, basically anyone who needed to be stood up for. They were the ones there that were so vocal, Keenan Camacho said about Summer Taylor. A similar page was established for Diaz Love, who also uses non-binary pronouns, according to organizers of that GoFundMe campaign.